Welcome, everyone. My name is Miguel Villarreal. I'm the interim co-executive director for the National Farm to School Network. Just a brief background on me. I'm new to the National Farm to School Network. I've been here just a little over 2 months, but I'm not new to farm to school. I've been involved in the farm to school movement now for over 3 decades. I also happen to serve on the advisory board of the National Farm to School Network for several years. My roots have always been in farming, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But first, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today for our movement meeting to celebrate National Farm to School Month. National Farm to School Month is intended to be a virtual space where the movement meeting is intended to be a virtual space during National Farm to School Month. It brings us together to join forces around farm to school, early care and education, to learn from one another, connect with one another, and more importantly, lift one another, especially those typically overlooked and undervalued. At this time, I'd like to introduce our team. We've got a wonderful, capable team on the National Farm to School Network that are available for you as your resource to support your work in farm to school and ECE. So I'm going to ask them to wave when I call out their name. And I want to start first with our interim executive director, Jessica Goodmanson, who's been with the National Farm to School Network for many years, and she truly is the heart and soul of this organization. So Jessica, would you mind waving? Our program policy team includes Sunny Baker, Tomas Delgado, Trisha Bautista, Sophia Reamer Boot, Karen Spangler, Ryan Betts, Cassandra Bull, Jasmine Edrington. Our finance, operations, communications, development team includes Scott Bunn, Tracy Starkovic, David Huda-Barrett, June Shun, Taher Aristu, and Corinne Gill. Thank you all. And you can find their contact information on our website. They're all available, as I am. We're here for all of you, and we welcome you to reach out to us at your convenience. Para los que hablan español, por favor, ven lo que está en el screen, por favor. Y se pueden llamar uno de los números y tenemos a alguien que va a poder traducir la información que están oyendo hoy. ¿Está bien? Gracias. Okay, so that was my best Spanish interpretation for the day. Hopefully everybody understood that. I'd like to now introduce Rio Holiday. She is going to take graphic notes today during our conversation, and then she'll be sharing out that information at the end of the day. So Rio, I am excited about seeing what you're going to come up with, because I know we've got a great cast of speakers and lots of great information today. So thank you, Rio.
Thank you, Miguel. And just to take a moment and explain what I'll be doing, like Miguel said, I'm joining as a graphic recorder. For those of you on camera, can you give me a wave if you know what graphic recording is, have seen it? And for those of you off camera, can you give me some sort of emoji? I see someone's already waved. I see some thumbs ups. Fabulous. There are so many wonderful people and screens to scroll through to see everyone. So for those of you who don't know what graphic recording is, we're folks who come into a meeting like this and do 3 things: listen to everything that's being said, process and listen for the really high-level themes and quotes, and then the part that you'll actually see is the third part of documenting using words and images what is actually happening. And so I'm switching my screen right now to my iPad screen. So you can actually see me drawing and see what's going on. For those of you who want to follow along, you are welcome to pin my screen and watch. For those of you who might find it distracting, I will be coming back on at the very end to give a summary and walk you through it. I'd also just want to say my background is actually in public health and healthy food access. And I even see some familiar names on this list. So it's wild and wonderful to be in this meeting with y'all. And I think that I am passing it to Sunny.
Hello, everyone. And for some of you, it's morning, for some it's afternoon. So good day, everyone. I'm Sunny Baker. I am the Interim Senior Director of Programs and Policy at NFSN, and we are so glad to have you all in this virtual space with us today. So I'm going to go through the agenda, and then we'll have a time for, thank you for starting the introductions. We're going to have a time to introduce ourselves in the chat to one another as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about NFSN. We're going to do a land acknowledgement. We're going to call you all in for some action with our values aligned universal meals campaign. So hopefully we get some inspiration today, and then we take that into an action that our policy director, Karen, is going to help guide us through. The theme of our movement meeting today is who's at the table, and we're going to get to do just that today, get to know who is at the table of Farm to School and how communities and people across the country are using Farm to School to build power in the food system. We'll get to know one another. We're going to go on a virtual field trip, hop on a virtual school bus, and head to Bighorn Country, Montana. We're going to get to hear from 3 incredible people who are building power using Farm to School and ECE in the food system for some presentations. Then we're going to get to hear from the NFSN partners who submitted videos about building power. We're going to have some regional breakouts. You all selected which region you were in during your registration for the meeting. So we're going to get to gather in that space and get a little bit closer to one another. Rio's going to come back on with those graphic notes in the video from today, and then we'll close. So a couple of logistics for everyone. We'd love to see you, especially during those regional breakouts. So we have this in meeting mode. Have your video on if you can, if you're able. Please stay muted when you're not talking so we can reduce background noise. We wanted to make the meeting accessible as we could for today, so we've enabled closed captioning, and you can turn that on by clicking the little live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. Please use the chat feature to ask us any questions or any support that you need. And if you need specific tech assistance, the wonderful Tracy Starkovich from our NFSN team is available to help through any tech questions. We acknowledge that we live and work on stolen land, that there are 574 federally recognized tribal nations in the US and countless communities that are not counted on that list. We recognize that Indigenous peoples are very much with us today and acknowledge those who have been brave enough to stay behind and have paid the ultimate sacrifice to survive. I'm tuning in today from the ancestral lands of the Osage and the Quapaw, now known as Little Rock, Arkansas, and I encourage each of you to do your own research. I know many of you know and have already about your place, and commit to that acknowledgement in action. And we're going to drop a link in the chat here so that if you haven't discovered already, you can find your native lands. We also want to acknowledge today that we all arrived to this space on the shoulders of our ancestors who have lifted us and allowed us to arrive here in this space. At NFSN, we strive to understand all of our partners as unique people representing unique communities. And we're so glad to have you here today as your whole selves. We recognize that our world and our country are in troubling times, and that in addition, we all have personal and community struggles that we're facing. Farm to school and early childcare is such an area of hope in food systems work. It's really that type of work that is helping us lean towards that comfortable survivor for our descendants, as my pal Chili Yazzie in New Mexico likes to call it. So again, so grateful to have you here today and for the opportunity to help ground us before we get started with a little bit more about National Farm to School Network. And I will turn it back over to Miguel.
Thank you, Sunny. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate everybody that's on here. I'm looking at the names that are coming up, and I see some people that I know, and I just wish that we could be in the same room. That would have so much more meaning to all of us. But this is where we are today. We're in this virtual space. And so we're going to take as much advantage of it as possible. So I thought what I'd do is tell you just a brief little story. You heard me talk about being a food service director for over 3 decades. So I'm just trying to frame what the National Farm to School Network meant to me. So I was just a handful of food service directors back in the late 90s, early 2000s, honestly, promoting locally grown foods. I was recently hired in a school district out here in Northern California, just north of San Francisco, Marin County. And I quickly learned that there were over 60 certified organic farms in the area. But I also learned that none of that food was being served in the schools. And I thought something is wrong. I'm not sure what's wrong, but we've got to figure this out. Back then, I didn't call it farm to school. I called it doing what was right for students, what was right for farmers, and what was right for the community. No one was using the word food equity in those days. At that time, I didn't know of anybody else, honestly, that was working on farm to school or engaging farmers. So it was around 2007 when the National Farm to School Network actually was founded. And through them, through the National Farm to School Network, I was able to make connections with other school food service directors around the state, just a handful at that time, that were working on farm to school. And so what we were able to do, I mean, I quickly reached out to some of these directors to find out what they were doing, and we shared best practices. How can we improve a program to provide locally sourced foods and engage our community and so forth? I'd venture to say that back then, when we started, this is 20, 30 years ago, there was probably just a handful of school food service directors that were engaged in farm to school. Probably no more than 5 to 10 school districts, honestly, from around the country. So let's fast forward to today, because of the work that National Farm to School Network has done and how instrumental they've been in this work since 2007. I'm just going to share some stats with you. So according to the 2018-19 USDA census, farm to school has grown to over 67,000 schools around the country. That's over 43 million students that are recipients of these great farm to school programs. And these schools are spending an average of about 1.2 billion, that's billion with a B, you heard me right, in farm to school. So let that sink in for just a second. National Farm to School Network has been able to grow and expand this from just a handful of schools to over 67,000 schools. Incredible work on behalf of everyone, and of course on behalf of all of you as well. So I asked myself, is National Farm to School Network having an impact on children's health across the country? Are they helping reduce dietary illnesses, supporting farmers, improving communities, and creating a healthier community, if you will? I say yes. And I want to thank the National Farm to School Network for all the work that they're doing, and all of us for the work that we're doing. So the network is, you've met the staff, incredible staff that we have. We have an advisory board and we have partners. We are a network of over 200 partners representing states and U.S. territories with over 20,000 members and still growing. But the National Farm to School Network can't do this work alone. We need all of us to do this. We need to engage the entire community to support these programs. We were engaging school food service staff, students, teachers, parents, administrators, farmers, city officials, community leaders, foundations, nonprofits, and so many others that were just engaged in developing this community. The National Farm to School Network is no different. They serve in the same capacity. So we need those same stakeholders to be a part of the National Farm to School Network membership. We need everyone's support through donations, through contacts, to build capacity. I'd like to see us get to 100% of the schools around the country engaged in farm to school programs. We can do that, but we've got to do it together. Okay, so the core functions of the network, you've heard me talk a little bit about that. We provide information, we network, and there's advocacy. We connect people to resources, to other people like we're doing today, and of course to policy, which is so important so we can continue our program. National Farm to School Network, next slide please, has grown since 2007, as you heard me talk about, but also reflecting with the progress that we've made to better support farm to school, early care, and education. This year, we're reforming and evolving, and we're looking at our partners and stakeholders. We are creating what we call lever teams, where we're taking our partners and some of our stakeholders are involved in this strategic planning and working on specific levers to helping grow the movement in a way that is informed by those on the ground. Who knows better than the people that are actually doing the work? All right, I want to talk a little bit about our call to action. So next slide. So I want to just share with you a little quick personal story regarding the call to action and how I finally realized what we were talking about. So I want to share a little bit about myself. I was born into a family of farm laborers. They followed the seasonal crops around the country. We lived in Texas, but we traveled to Idaho, California, North Dakota, Minnesota, throughout the season, as I said, to follow the crops. I began working in the fields alongside my parents at the age of 11. Just doing whatever it took to support the family. We didn't have great living conditions. The wages weren't that good either. Terrible working conditions, and in some cases, little to no access other services that were needed for basic necessities. What I didn't know this was back in the 60s and 70s, I didn't know that there were advocates speaking on our behalf, speaking on behalf of farm laborers. I can improve working conditions, wages, basic living conditions, if you will. So people like Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, these people were addressing racial inequities in the food system 60 years ago. So let's fast forward to today. In 2018, the National Farm to School Network undertook a systems mapping strategic plan. They came up with a call to action. What this call to action said that by 2025, 100% of communities will hold power in a racially just food system. This call to action recognizes that food systems have been deliberately shaped by racial inequities and continue to perpetuate them, and that we must work together to make a food system that values every person and every place. Now, can you imagine? It's been 60 years. Of course, we need to address this. And this transformation, there's not a better time than today. We've got communities, we have organizations, we have companies, we even have our own government supporting and backing up the work that we're doing by improving the lives of people through food. This was evidenced most recently by the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health that was recently held in DC, with over 600 passionate food and health advocates just like yourselves in attendance. I was fortunate to be there in attendance representing the National Farm to School Network. One of the key highlights at this convening was that everyone is ready to take action. We know what we need to do, and now we need to just do it. Our actions are going to lead to healthier students, providing nutrition education, supporting farmers, farm workers, ensuring that everybody has access to affordable, locally grown food. California, I'm proud to say, was one of the first states to acknowledge that healthy food for all students is essential in improving children's health, reducing diet-related illnesses, removing all stigmas from receiving a free meal at school. Something so fundamental that I still can't believe that we're debating whether we should provide healthy meals to all children across the nation. But we're seeing more and more states from around the country that are also leading this charge and moving this direction. I'm now going to turn it over to Karen Spangler, who's going to, our policy director, who's going to talk a little bit about our values aligned universal meals and what that means and how we're actually engaging the community. Karen.
Thank you, Miguel. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm Karen Spangler. I'm the policy director here at National Farm to School Network. I'm based in Washington, D.C., but as I obnoxiously say every single time, I'm from Michigan originally. There's plenty of great farm to school work to be proud of, both there and here in my new home. So I'm proud to head up our Values Aligned Universal Meals initiative. And as Miguel talked about, we at National Farm to School Network, those of you in this virtual room here today, you're here because you understand the power of food and you understand that it's a priority. And we want to make this connection that all kids should be welcome. All kids are welcome at the table of our school and ECE meal policies. And we need to value all the people and beings who get meals to that table. So healthy school meals for all kids and healthy school meals that benefit all. So universal meals policies paired with values-based procurement and operations get us closer to that goal. And we've developed a campaign of communications tools to fuel this collective effort to establish a just and equitable food system that promotes the health of all children and benefits producers, workers, and communities. So really building on a lot of the great work that's been happening to talk about the benefits of healthy school meals for all, and also as we understand being at the intersection of the classroom, the cafeteria, the agriculture space, seeing all the people, all the communities that are involved. We'll go to the next slide. So across sectors, we all have a stake in school and early care and education meals. And again, if you're here today, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but we want to broaden that conversation because everyone has a stake in that. And its impact in their community, whether or not they realize it. So we want to talk about the impact and the potential of these policies. It isn't about a single particular policy change, but it provides the tools for advocates and community members to have conversations about the benefits and the urgency of policy change. And next slide, to make that a little bit more accessible, we have created some tools and tailored resources, including this is the Build Your Own Meal game. And this is to help a broader public learn a little bit about the real world impact of what gets served in school meals and what it takes to get to our plates. So if I was an average parent sending my kid to school, how much would I know about the very complex system of school or early care and education meals and all that's involved in getting it there? And so we wanted to talk about some of the values that can be involved, that can be helped or impacted by these procurement decisions and school food decisions. And then building on that, how universal access would really create, exponentially transform the reach of efforts like farm to school procurement. So this is an example. We really, I urge people to go here to our website and play the game and to share the game with others. It's designed to be accessible to a broad audience. And then for taking action, on the next slide, we've created action packs that break down the key stakeholder audiences, key advocate audiences to tailor resources just for you. So whether you are a parent or a policymaker, an educator, a school nutrition professional, an administrator, somebody who is in the school in an administrative capacity day to day, or a farmer or a farm worker, we have tailored resources in the action packs of what you can do. We've also, as part of this, held workshops. Most recently, we talked about the best time to educate your candidate, or one of the best times, don't give up after, is before the election, in nonpartisan public education efforts that can just educate anybody, whoever they are, whoever ends up being in office, about the benefits of universal meals and farm to school, and these values aligned efforts. So I encourage you to take a look at those action packs, to take a look yourself, and hopefully to share with others, because we want people to communicate and grow the possibility and the potential of this movement, and of policies like these to broaden the table for all kids. So I will turn it back over to Sunny.
Thanks, Karen. Excited for y'all to take that action after the meeting today. You've already started this, but if you haven't yet, please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know your name, your organization and affiliation, if that applies to you, and where you're tuning in from. Next slide, please. So why NFSN? Why now? Why movement meeting? We've talked a lot about at the network that systems are keeping communities from access to good locally grown food at schools and early childcare centers, especially with the ability and ease to purchase those local foods. And even within these systems, we have so many incredible examples of communities that are growing power from within, leaning on one another to make incredible examples of the farm to school and ECE movement. And you'll get to hear 14 of those stories today. Imagine a world, imagine what we could do if local food was the affordable and easy option, if incentives even were provided for the purchase of locally grown food in schools and ECEs, as they are in a number of states currently. Imagine if those incentives were prioritizing small scale and socially disadvantaged farmers. Imagine what we could be if communities were properly resourced and supported in all aspects of life that relate to food systems, housing, jobs, transportation, so that not only was eating nourishing food possible, that it was the easier option. These outcomes are possible, and NFSN wants to be a part of a food system where 100% of communities hold power in a racially just food system. It's why we announced the call to action in 2018, and we know that it will take each of us, all of you, caring, learning, taking care of one another, and growing power together to demand the food system that we deserve and that our communities and our children deserve. We're going to get to hear from our first one of those examples now, and I'll turn it over to Tomas from our team to introduce.
Thanks, Sunny, and greetings, everyone. My name is Tomas Delgado, Program Manager, and I'm excited to uplift the work of the Hardin School District serving the Crow Reservation in Bighorn County, Montana. I've had the pleasure of working with the Hardin School District through NFSN's Sea Change and Native Communities Project, which aims to expand farm to school activities in Native communities. The Sea Change project strengthens community-wide initiatives and build food sovereignty and communities' resilience through revitalizing traditional, culturally reflective foods. The approach of the Hardin School District fosters youth empowerment, school-based gardening and agriculture, and flourishing community partnerships. Because of this and these amazing qualities, NFSN wanted to record the most recent site visit to the Hardin School District just to capture the important work of their amazing farm to school program. So without further ado, just get that video started and let's take a visit to Montana.
Farm to School enriches the community by healing all the families. They reconnect with the land. There's a history of our people, of the disconnect of the land, and so You know, with all these activities, with the gardening and everything, we've been able to heal.
Farm to School means everything. It means community, it means gathering, and it means that we're going to sit down and eat really good food. I've been super lucky to be able to be working in Farm to School for the last 7 years. During that time, I've learned a lot about food, what it means to me, what it means to my community, and what it means to bring people together. It's super important for the food to be culturally reflective of the community because it creates an opportunity for individuals, especially our students, to be able to take pride in their food.
It brings up tradition for the students. It honors their families. It honors the past. And I think they're more interested if they can connect it to their family or the past or their culture.
I think the food that we grow right now affects my culture because my ancestors depended on it. We actually lived off of this and my ancestors lived off of this. I carry it on from my ancestors because they mostly depended on that.
Our ancestors did all like farming to keep us healthy. Without farming, we wouldn't be here.
I think it's important for kids to know where their food comes from. That's a battle that we face. We've hosted field trips out here with the students coming out to see where the vegetables are being grown, that they're being served in the cafeteria. And we have actually gone to the school too as Meet Your Farmer events and brought samples along and to be able to meet the kids in person and for them to put a face with the name of Living Your Farm. Farm to School is a great way, a program for us to be connected in the community with the public school system and be able to provide fresh, local grown vegetables.
When I think of Farm to School, I think of my own kids and the opportunities for them to eat foods that come from our area.
This is something that is a major, project that is healing a whole nation.
I believe in Farm to School because I believe in the people in the community and building all of those connections to strengthen the other pieces of our community too.
All right, thanks Tomas for sharing us that wonderful video. I'm so incredibly inspired, and every time I watch that, I just get even more inspired. So now I have the pleasure of transitioning us into this next section of our movement meeting, where we're going to hear from 3 amazing speakers, starting from Suparna Kudizia, calling in from California. We're going to hear from Aaliyah Brown from New York, and then Martine Hippolyte from Washington, D.C. We will not have time for Q&A and questions at the end of the presentations, but I do encourage you to take note of their email addresses and connect with them after the meeting and beyond and continue this movement. So with that, I'm going to introduce us to our very first speaker, Suparna Kudizia, co-director at the Cooperative Food Empowerment Directive and is a decolonial educator and immigrant. She brings with her over 15 years of experience imagining and breathing life into educational programs and leading organizational development. Suparna believes in the power of unraveled unlearning to shift narratives, heal trauma, and transform systems. She is guided by ancestral revisioning, abolitionist and decolonial praxis, and manifesting collective dreams. Suparna responds to the call to return stolen wealth as the choreographer of collective change. By moving money where it can have critical impact on building a beautiful regenerative food system into the hands of cooperative people of color. Suparna lives on the unceded Kumeyaay land with her partner, toddler, and numerous bunches of mint. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Suparna to start us off with the very first presentation. Suparna?
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Trisha, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Suparna, and I use she, they pronouns. I am based in unceded Kumeyaay lands, as Trisha just mentioned, which is also known as San Diego. And I'm an immigrant and was born and raised in India. And my access needs are met here today, and I'm very excited to be with all of you. As mentioned in the first slide, I'm the choreographer for Collective Change, also known as the executive director of the Cooperative Food Empowerment Directive, which we call COFED. But outside of paid work, I'm a parent, an educator, and a reluctant doctor of education. I am in this work because education is my tool of choice as an organizer, and I believe that our descendants, as Sunny named them in the beginning, deserve a decolonial food system and an economy that centers not just our wellness, but also the planet's. We can switch to the next slide. So a little bit about what our organization is. COFED is a cooperative movement builder where we believe in the power of young, queer, trans, Black, Indigenous people, and people of color to be able to transform our current food system from an extractive system to one that is rooted and guided by values of healing our relationship with one another, our planet, and all life in it. We support young people to build and scale up their food and land justice-based cooperatives to be able to transform our food ecosystem. We can go to the next slide, Trisha. And so here's a little bit more about what we've done since our inception in 2011 on a college campus. And until 2018, we worked primarily with college students to start or scale up their food-based cooperative enterprises, from cooperative grocery stores and gardens to bulk buying clubs. As Miguel mentioned in his introduction to the National Farm to School Network, just about how he was seeing, you were seeing so much discrepancy in what you were noticing with the number of farms around in Marin County, but what was not reaching schools. That's what we were also noticing in our inception, is the food was not really coming to folks who were living and consuming food in that area. However, in 2018, we made a pivot to working more directly with young people in the community, and with those most deeply impacted by and those who are stewarding the work of transforming the food system. And this happened in and beyond college campuses. So right now we work nationally and have been cultivating more intentional relationships with cooperators worldwide as well. Of course, the pandemic has affected our programming and more critically, the farmers and cooperators that we work with on the ground. So we are right now in a renewed phase of moving resources into the hands from whom these resources have been historically stolen. Next slide, please. So briefly, we are guided by values of cooperation, joy, love, impact, and accountability, especially as we actualize our vision of this just and joyful cooperative Mama Earth. Next slide, please. Now, you might be wondering how we do this, which is why I've been invited to spend this time with you all, incredible food system leaders today. So our approach at COFED is to build power, and it's split into three main strategies. We are building economic power through moving stolen wealth back into the hands of Black and Indigenous people across the country through non-extractive capital redistribution and grant making. We're also building the political muscle of youth in our networks through education and technical assistance with our flagship cooperative education programs, BUD, which is Build, Unlearn, and Decolonize, and our Just Leader Fellowship. We're also building our cultural power through the work of story archiving and storytelling, because for our communities, as we just saw in the video, cooperation and doing food work that is based in cooperative values don't just serve an economic function, but they also meet cultural needs. Our communities have a long history of cooperation that is rooted in regenerative relationship to people, land, and our planet. And so we intend to preserve this history as well as nurture it through equipping the next generation of food system leaders to be able to steward this mission as well. Next slide, please. So we're gathered here today to talk about the table. This table of who owns and manages resources in our food system and how these resources are governed. And to be able to address who's at the table, we also need to take a critical look at how this table was made and if it's still meeting the needs of our communities. In this case, I will take our food system as an example, which is built on a legacy of genocide, enslavement, and theft of land and labor. It is built on extraction beyond repair from the earth, and it is a table built on a shaky foundation. It's a table that's inherently problematic. And I invite us today to push the edges of our acceptance of tables that are not long enough, not wide enough to hold the breadth and longitude of our intersections across race, class, geography, migration status, language, gender, and disability. It's not just about getting to the table. Sometimes it's about having the courageous realization that the table is not accessible and that the table was by design built to intentionally keep certain groups of people from sitting at the same table, from breaking bread at the same table. So really the question that when Trisha approached me with this, I was really excited to bring to all of us to collectively inquire is who built this table and who does it really serve? Next slide, please. So even if this table might be salvageable, so to speak, what if the chairs are broken? And to think about our food system in a vacuum without a critical analysis of our land system is literally like building a table with broken chairs or chairs that are not accessible to all body types. I invite us to think about who makes decisions about this table and the table. Is it those on the front line? What does frontline mean in a context where people are not just organized on the basis of a center and the margins, but in a world where we can hold multiple positionalities and exist at multiple intersections? I'm wondering and inviting all of us to take a more three-dimensional approach to margins and the center by not just including, but following the leadership of those who have been historically marginalized in the food system, and for whom the food system not just feeds our communities, but actually holds the stories of ancestral resistance and seeds for future resilience. And our food system can be and is being transformed. We're seeing it today. We just saw a beautiful video. You're going to see it in the rest of your afternoon and days over here. We see this as this transformation happening at an incredible scale through the leadership of QT BIPOC cooperators in the work that I do. We see that when young people who are passionate about transforming the food system, and then they're engaging with and they're equipped with the skills, capital, and resources to do that, we witness a powerful new version of our food system that is guided by justice, healing, and regeneration. You're going to hear from amazing people right after I'm done to tell you more about how this work is happening in a regional way. We recognize that sometimes our communities are invited to sit on broken chairs. So our job in the food system is not only to bring our chairs, but to also make it so that we can equip young, queer, trans, Black, Indigenous people of color cooperators to build their own chairs. Our work in the food system, whether it's in land stewardship, food production, distribution, composting, or even retail, needs to be cradled in a conversation about racial, gender, class, language, disability, and immigration justice. At COFED, we take this intersectional approach to transforming the food system, and that's how we do our job. We hope you will join us. Thank you for your time, and I invite you to connect with us further to learn more. I'll drop the link to our website in the chat. I appreciate being able to share a little bit about our work. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Suparna, for that wonderful introduction to COFED. I am now going to introduce us to our next speaker, Aaliyah Brown. Aaliyah Brown is a Senior Communications and Content Manager at Teens for Food Justice. She's a communication specialist with more than a decade of experience in affordable housing, criminal justice reform, and food equity. Before joining Teens for Food Justice, she developed comprehensive communications strategies to shift the narrative on violence countrywide through traditional and social media community engagement and thought leadership at Common Justice. Prior to joining Common Justice, she provided analytic support on housing policy and drove communication strategy for statewide campaigns at Enterprise Community Partners Incorporation. This included the launch of Justice Involved Housing Initiative, a leading role into the statewide source of income coalition and co-leadership of the Regional Affordable and Fair Housing Roundtable. Aaliyah earned her BA, or Bachelor's of Arts, in Sociology with honors from the City University of New York, Baruch College. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Aaliyah. Aaliyah, thank you so much for being here with us and telling us about Teens for Food Justice.
Thank you so much, Trisha. I'm really happy to be here with all of you today. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to share more about Teens for Food Justice. So for folks who are new to Teens for Food Justice, we can go to the next slide, please, Trisha. We are a nonprofit organization, primarily based in New York City, but also with locations in other parts of the country we'll talk a little bit more about later. And we build high-capacity hydroponic farms in Title I schools. These are schools that are located in communities that are where residents are living below the poverty line, that are essentially considered food deserts or experiencing food apartheid, marginalized communities that are directly impacted by an inability to access affordable, healthy, and nutritious food. As Teens for Food Justice, we go into schools, we build hydroponic farms in partnership with Department of Education and teacher partners. And this really allows students to have hands-on experience with urban agriculture, growing in their school, an opportunity to learn more about nutrition education, and to become food advocates in their communities. Next slide, please. So I'm sure most of us here know this, who are working in the food space and in the urban agriculture space and in the farming space, but a number of our fellow community members are living in food insecure households. There are countless children experiencing food insecurity and hunger. There are millions of Americans living in food deserts or communities that were experiencing food apartheid with an inability to access nutritious food that they need. Despite all of that, we spend a lot of money every single year treating food-related diseases. Next slide, please. In New York City specifically, can we go back one? Sorry. In New York City specifically, okay. Sorry, Trisha, can we go back one slide? In New York City specifically, there are over 1.5 million residents who are also experiencing food insecurity. 1 in 4 children do not know where their next meal is going to come from. There are a lot of parents who are struggling to put meals on the table. And New York City alone spends $4 billion in trying to treat food-related diseases. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, at Teens for Food Justice, we go into Title I schools and we build these hydroponic systems. They're high-capacity systems that allow us to grow upwards of 10,000 pounds of produce annually in schools, using 1/10 of the water needed to grow produce, healthy produce. Our systems support students within school to be able to get hands-on experience with growing produce within their schools, but also exposure to urban agriculture. A lot of our students have never experienced this before, don't have hands-on experience with farming or urban agriculture. And through our programming, coupled with STEM education, we're able to introduce students to this type of work. We're able to share more with them about what goes into urban agriculture, the way that the healthy food they eat impacts their diet versus the unhealthy food they might have saturated in their communities, are impacting their health and their communities as well. So in the work that we do, once our farms are launched and they're at full growing capacity, for folks who are not super familiar with hydroponic farming in general, what we do is we primarily use cocoa cores or cocoa plugs, which are the basis for where we plant our seeds for our systems. They're put into these sort of raft cultures, and in our systems, they're able to grow upwards of 10,000 pounds annually per school. Next slide, please. So what's really exciting about the work that we do is not only do students have the ability to have hands-on experience and learn more, but they're able to actually reap the benefits of the produce that's grown within their school. Most of our produce is distributed directly to the cafeteria within their school, where students are able to have salads, make smoothies, and create other recipes that are healthy and nutritious. And there's also a community distribution component. So we work with local partners where our schools are located to distribute produce to the community. So this is through partnerships, community food distributions, and other events that we support with the produce that we grow, all of which is given away for free. Next slide, please. So our program really encompasses multiple areas. So our mission embodies minds, bodies, and communities. We're really trying to make sure that we're feeding all of these areas. So our programming is multifold in the sense that we partner with the STEM curriculum within the school. So a lot of our Department of Education teachers who support our programming are teaching science classes like environmental science, biology, and earth science. And those classes are able to come through the farm and learn more. We're providing healthy produce that's consumable and healthy for students and communities. And we're also ensuring that the produce that we grow is accessible to the local community as well. Students are able to take produce home. There's food distribution events that we have. Parents are able to sign up if they're interested. So it's really multifold in the sense of trying to empower students, not just through nutrition education, but also through food advocacy. A lot of the work that we do through our after-school programming as well is tailored to advocacy. So students are learning tools about what's necessary when it comes to healthy food and taking that to pop-up events that they're doing within their school, or even all the way to city council floors to make testimony about policies that would better support access to healthy foods in their communities. Next slide, please. So in a lot of ways, our programming also supports introductions to different kinds of work. There are a lot of students who never thought that they could have careers in urban agriculture, whether that be directly through working on our farm or learning more about farming policy or agricultural policy. So there's been a lot of exposure there as well to different career opportunities, which is really incredible. And gaining hands-on experience with working on the farm has opened a lot of students' eyes to what it takes to be able to grow something healthy from start to finish. And a lot of our students take a lot of pride and excitement in that. Next slide, please. Everything we grow on our farm is healthy, from butterhead lettuce to kale to our vine crop systems for cucumbers and tomatoes. All of these items are able to be harvested, and our students are able, through programming in our classes, to make salads, learn different recipes, incorporate our produce into recipes that are culturally representative of where they come from, which is also really incredible. So we're excited about that too. Next slide, please. And in terms of communities, as I mentioned before, a huge component of the work that we do is our food distribution programming. So not just growing produce and providing students with hands-on experience, but also sharing produce with our communities and making sure that healthy food is accessible to everyone and affordable, because again,
Did we lose Aaliyah? All right.
Dang, it looks like we lost Aaliyah. Trisha, do you want to move
We can
to
pass on
Martine?
to. Mhm.
And hopefully we'll get Aaliyah back and we can wrap up with her too.
All right. Take it away, Sophia, from Martine. First to introduce Martine.
Thanks, Trisha. Yeah, hopefully we get Aaliyah back, but in the meantime, we'll move on to our presentation from Martine Hippolyte. She is the Director of Community Engagement for Fresh Farm, a local food systems nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. Martine remains energized to lead community engagement efforts that help create a more just and equitable food system. Martine is primarily responsible for providing leadership and management in the development, planning, and coordination of community councils, as well as outreach, technical assistance, and education programming. Martine remains most proud of the meaningful and trusting relationships she has built with various stakeholders and think partners on behalf of her organization and her team. So welcome, Martine.
Thank you, Sophia. My bio sounds so much better when you say it, girl. Thank you. And I'm so sorry to Aaliyah, but we're gonna hop into it. So today, this presentation, I titled it The Road to Empowerment in Farm to Early Childcare Education in DC. Let's put emphasis on the word road because we aren't quite there yet, but I'm happy to share my journey with you today. Yep. So very briefly, I'll touch on Fresh Farm for those of you who aren't familiar, talk about community engagement at Fresh Farm, highlight the public participation spectrum, a little bit about our work, and then some goals moving forward, again, to hit the ultimate quintessential destination of empowerment within our communities. So a little bit about Fresh Farm. Our mission and values are really centered on improving the food system, making it more just, more equitable. And we do that by way of 3 main programs. So one is our farmers market or food economy side. We have 33 farmers markets spread between DC, Virginia, and Montgomery County. Another one is our food education program called Food Prints. Some of you may have heard of it. We're currently at 19 DCPS schools where children grow, cook, eat, and learn together. And then our last main component is the pop-up food hub, where we use farmers markets as the central hub and move high volumes of food into communities. So I lead the community engagement team, which is our newest body of work at Fresh Farm. I've been with Fresh Farm for 7 years. The community engagement team is about 60 days old, so we're still developing. And most of our work falls into these 4 buckets of centering community voice, engaging new and existing partners in holistic solutions to food access and food and community, facilitating community-driven coalitions, and then also providing training and technical assistance. I can't give a presentation without giving love to my wonderful team. We have community food educators that are tied directly with their community. We have food access coordinators and a whole bunch of community engagement enthusiasts. For those of you who are just starting out, don't be discouraged as you're listening to me. Don't say, well, I don't have a team, it's just me. It literally started with just me, and I had the help of someone else for like 10 hours a week when we first started all this work in 2021. So don't be discouraged, y'all. Just stay with me. But here's my team. Thank you, Trisha. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting to say next slide, but you're killing it, Trisha. Thank you so much. So this presentation, I really wanted to center the IAP2 public participation spectrum. I came across this in my public health program, and I haven't been able to let go of it since. But basically, for those of you who don't know, this IAP2 stands for International Association for Public Participation. And what I love here is they're breaking down the different components of public
participation. Of course, for us, empowering is the ultimate goal, but there are still some really positive ways to engage your community. For instance, informing, consulting, involving, and collaborating. And not every activity that you do at your organization is going to involve all of these components. You have to discern what's most appropriate, what you're ready for, and what your community is ready for. So as I go along a little bit of our story, I'll just kind of like let you know where we are on this spectrum. So before we got started with anything in 2021, there were a few things that we needed to get done first before even hitting that first inform area on the spectrum. One was assuring that everyone on the team understands the goal. Now, when we first started this project, the team was just 2 people, right? So a little bit easier to communicate the goal and have everybody be agreed upon the mission. And as your team grows, whether it's 3, 4, or 5 people, whether it's your organization or you and community members, it's important that everybody understands the goal. Is the goal to increase farm to school awareness? Is the goal to increase health outcomes? This is important to establish, as it'll kind of tweak the way that you talk to community members. So it's important for us all to stay on the same page. Another big piece before even getting started, before that first one-on-one cold call, was to make sure that I and my team checked our assumptions, biases, and exercised cultural humility at all times. Cultural humility was something I learned about a little later in the game. It's interesting because when you're working with community members that look like you, for instance, I'm a Black woman, I'm from DC or have lived there for years, you might start to catch yourself making assumptions or comparing your experience to someone else's. So it's important that we exercise cultural humility and commit to a lifelong learning and self-reflection process. Also, before you engage your community, you want to thoroughly understand your audience or who you're talking to. So we spent a copious amount of time gauging the interest of those we were trying to reach. We spent a lot of time understanding the capacity of community members. How much could they give? Taking note of the community members' skill set and knowledge. They're already coming with an abundance of skills and knowledge. So we need to understand that before we come in and teach them something that could potentially come off as degrading or disrespectful. Also understanding how the community best receives information. So in those calls, those intimate calls with your community partners, or any way that you choose to communicate, take note of the way they speak. Take note of what they understand when you're speaking, and then flow that into your learning sessions. And also too, I think a lot of times we fall into the habit of only communicating with our newer partners, people who understand, people who are already on the listserv. But do a little bit of research to figure out who you're not reaching. So that was our first step before we called, before we emailed, or anything else. So then we moved into the forum. After we collected all that data together, we identified a mutually appreciated starting point for information sharing. So we figured out, hey, Miss Sharon, Miss Brittany, what do you want to learn about? We kind of figured out what would be beneficial to also teach about and found the middle ground, right? We don't want to bore people off the inception of trying to get people excited for farm to school or farm to ECE. Another piece is just keeping the North Star in mind, design learning and the vehicle of learning based on community need. For instance, are we really wanting to reach early childcare providers if we're setting up the meeting time at 6 p.m.? Or should we figure out when the nap times are, the average lunch times for these sites, and adjust that way? And then also lifting up and connecting others during learning sessions. So we're giving them an opportunity to connect with each other and honor each other's experience. So this was just a little example of where we landed after doing a few months of research, which really you could do a lifetime of research within your communities, but we wanted to get started in some type of way. And so I just kind of drew arrows to where in our language, we placed honor of our community and also hoping to connect each other. So a lot of our learning sessions are comprised of sharing successes and challenges, and also people sharing the amazing work that they're already doing. So now we're going to kind of move into the involved session. After we had months of amazing conversations with EC providers, we had learning sessions and workshops, we decided we wanted to bump it up a notch and create a Farm to Early Child Care Coalition, which was funded by ASPHN. And so what we did in partnership with OSSI is we created these virtual monthly meeting spaces for 90 minutes at a time. There was plenty of pre-work. There were plenty of group activities. The coalition facilitators encouraged EC providers to share their input and policy suggestions. And we had a multitude of stakeholders present in the room, from government agency reps to farmers to EC providers. And we were really, really excited about this. We did hit a roadblock, however. Trisha, you can hit the next slide. So the roadblock was when we got everybody in this space together, to our dismay, every single community member we had connected with as a nonprofit was completely silent in the coalition space. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. So first we thought, they're shot. It's something new. You know, let's give it a couple more meetings. To our dismay, after a couple meetings, it was still silent. So we decided to pivot. So we stopped the meetings, we changed the meeting time, we synthesized stakeholders' needs and the EC providers' feedback, and we created a sub-coalition of providers in order to build trust, rapport, empower, and amplify voice. We provided stipends and, of course, eliminated all pre-work. So we just talked about what Farm to ECE is to us after we really built that trust, figured out how it's being implemented within DC, identified barriers to implementation, and then we created recommendations to build on for our larger ECE space. So this combines that consult and involve within the spectrum that I showed before. And so through that space, we still meet every month, all the EC providers in our coalition. The EC providers decide the topic, the direction, and the invitees for the larger meetings. So they have more control over the space, more focused coalition meeting topics. And then also the EC providers are starting to take leadership roles within that space. I know I'm running out of time. I'm gonna try to zoom through the rest. And so moving into the collaboration, all of our EC providers and community members participate in every level of creation and development of the tools that we provide right now from our community engagement team. So these are a few really innovative tools that our community members helped us synthesize and continue to review. So one is helping us to generate a QR code that we place on all our market share bags. The community spoke and we responded by providing recipes, storage tips, produce tips that all could be accessed through our market share bags. We embarked on a video production project, which gave short bite-sized information about really tricky produce items. And we also provide trainings and technical assistance. Again, all of this was born from community voice, community approval, and community continued review. Also, this is one of our garden workshops that we had. We had participants ranging from cooks to directors, all people who were either connected to the coalition or who we partnered with through technical assistance that were really beginning to get bought in and take ownership over the growing at their school. I think this is the last slide, y'all, but this is the ultimate, our last few goals. One, we hope to have a gradual release of responsibility within the coalition. We feel like that'll really take empowerment home. This year, we're gonna increase peer learning opportunities, share continued learning opportunities on advocacy and development, and then help to widen and broaden community audience through connections. And I think that might be the last one. I'm so sorry to my timekeeper. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Martine. That was such a wonderful presentation. At this time, since we did lose Aaliyah for a bit there, I'm going to pass it back to Aaliyah to allow her some time to finish up her presentation. Thank you all so much for your patience. And I'm going to revert back to our slide. Aaliyah, go ahead and wrap up. your-
Hi,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you again. Thank you so much for your grace and your patience. Apologize for the technical difficulties. I got booted out, but just to quickly wrap up, I just wanted to share that Teams for Food Justice, as I mentioned, we are primarily based in New York. If we could go one slide back, sorry, Tricia. We're primarily based in New York City and we're growing. So we have a site in the Bronx at the DeWitt Educational Campus. We currently have one farm in Far Rockaway, and we're quickly expanding to a 4-site hub. As we know, the Rockaway Peninsula is experiencing extreme food insecurity and food access issues. So we're excited about that. We have 2 sites in Brooklyn and 1 currently in Manhattan and others on the way. So I will drop a link to our website in the chat for everyone. And just quickly on the next slide, just to share, although we're mostly based in New York, we are expanding. So we actually do have a farm site in Denver, Colorado, at the Bruce Randolph School. And we'll be launching another hydroponic farm in a community center there. And we have plans to expand to Miami as well. So again, our work is primarily focused on bringing young people into the fold of hydroponic farming, also, increasing advocacy skills around that to be for young people to be food justice advocates in their communities and beyond, and also tackling food-related diseases through healthy produce that we're growing on our farms. So thank you again for allowing me a moment to finish up, and I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be here with you all.
Thank you, Aaliyah. I'm going to go ahead and transition us into the next piece of our movement meeting. David will introduce us to our partner video feature.
Hey everybody, I'm David. I'm the communications director at NSFN, and we worked in the previous several weeks on putting together a video. Partners are essential part of our network and collaboration in the Farm to School movement, and we invited partners to submit a video responding to the question, what does power mean to you or your organization, and what does building power look like for your organization? We work with Red Squared, a production and multimedia group based in Jackson, Mississippi, to compile the video submission. And we just want to say a big thank you to all the partners who submitted a video. It was really great to see all your faces and hear from you about what power building looks like as we build this movement together. Tricia, go ahead and play the video.
We build power in our communities through supporting representation, culturally appropriate training, and inclusive media. Power to us means the freedom to exist and grow the current and future leaders of farming. We do this by connecting people to farming, animals, and the land, building a strong foundation and creating real change.
We build power in our communities by inspiring kids to eat their vegetables. Power to us means feeling healthy.
Power to us means our students know where their food comes from and understand food's relationship to their health and our environment.
Power to us means healthy lands, healthy people, and healthy economies.
At the Northwest Tennessee Local Food Network, we build power in our communities by empowering people of all ages to be curious and know where their food comes from.
Power to us means that we are able to exercise control over preferences, and we have the ability to influence environments and events around us.
At Farmed Institution New England, we build power in our communities.
By mobilizing the power of institutions.
Power of institutions.
Institutions to transform our food system.
To us, power means
uplifting the voices and needs of those who've been historically marginalized.
Power means finding strength in sharing and collaboration.
That decisions are made by those who are most impacted by the work.
It means amplifying and sharing the work of those in our network.
To us, power means helping all of our partners to reach their goals.
Now, power to us means having the knowledge, resources, and support to control our own futures. And with students, families, and community, we plan to build a healthy environment where we can grow our own food and control our healthy futures.
The Ohio Farm to School and Farm to Early Care and Education movement is growing by empowering schools and early care and education sites to purchase, serve, and teach about local foods, as well as nutrition and agriculture.
Melody's bed. So today, usually I plant garlic on the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad birth anniversary, which is October the 7th. Today, I'm doing it because I wanted to tell y'all the power of, gardening and farming within the community. So I share this particular garlic with my neighbors, and the power of sharing means that, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it to help others. So
at Phi Global, we build community power in our community by sharing fresh food. We share the knowledge of growing fresh food, of harvesting fresh food, of preparing fresh food, and preserving fresh food. Power to us is affordable access to fresh food. Fresh food is a right, not a privilege, just like breathing.
At The Good Acre, a nonprofit food hub in the Twin Cities, we build power in our communities by sourcing food from BIPOC and emerging farmers in Minnesota and getting fresh, healthy, and culturally relevant crops to schools in our community. Power to us means using the purchasing power of our wholesale buyers to do the most good, impacting more farmers and investing in a food system where food from here is for here.
I have a weird question, Lily. And I'm not a IT professional at all.
Hey y'all, and Lily, I think we'll get your question answered in the chat. Tracy will reach out. So glad to get to enjoy that video with you all together, and thanks again to everyone who participated. I especially love the St. Louis participations. That's where I grew up, but also the goat and the chicken was a nice addition to have those voices heard too. So we are now going to move into some breakout rooms to get to connect with one another, to get to meet the people who are in your region. Each of you chose a region when you registered for the meeting today. So we are going to auto filter you into those breakout rooms by region in just a moment here. If you would like to just go ahead and move across the country real quick or switch region for whatever reason, just get in touch with Tracy Starkovich, and she will help get you moved into the right space. And then David, do you have an update on the Spanish speakers for breakout?
For now, Spanish speakers stay in this room, and then we will handle that after everyone started.
Okay, so thank you so much, Diego, our interpreter. And yes, so if you are a Spanish speaker, stay in the main room and we'll get you put into the room of your choice. So I'm going to go ahead and have those rooms open up. Oh, and Scott, can you tell us about how much time we have?
We've got about 20 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scott.
And then we've got about 15 minutes for wrap up.
Appreciate it. Thanks, y'all. Welcome back to the main room. Hopefully those were some good, fruitful conversations and the start of some larger conversations about connecting more regionally to grow power with farm to school in the food system. So I have the pleasure now of turning it over to Rio to do a recap of what the journey we've been on so far today. So Rio, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Great to be back again. So what you're seeing is my screen and my high-level capturing of what I heard. And so starting on this left-hand side, these were some of the invitations that we were given to start with. So, for example, we were invited to imagine a food system we deserve, we were reminded, why us, why now? It takes all of us, that despite the systems being the barrier, there are examples of power building that we heard. And why now? We know what we need to do, we just need to do it. We anchored in the call to action that 100% of communities hold power in a racially just food system, and heard about the values aligned universal meals campaign where kids are at the table. Then moving into the next sort of middle chunk of the graphic, we heard from our guest speakers, and they talked about the way that they have been building power, as well as naming that the table is inherently problematic. And there's a lot of metaphor going on here, but I thought this group would be cool with that. So there's a tree in the middle, and the roots of the tree are the types of power that the first presenter talked about. Economic power, for example, moving stolen wealth back into Black and brown hands. There's political power, for example, education and providing technical assistance to young people. There's cultural power, for example, narrative building and stewardship of the narratives. Then as we move into the tree, we heard about the mind, body, and community framework and the levels at which change is taking place. And I was playing around with whether that could fit into the tree metaphor, with mind sort of as the trunk, for example, doing that hands-on work. Bodies, some of the branches, for example, immersive programs, and communities, another branch, and examples there being advocacy in the community, education and skill building in the community, and distribution of the food that is grown in the schools. And then leading up to the tree, we heard about the road to empowerment, with the reminder that it's the road, it's not the destination. And then there were these different points along the road. And the first most important part was to prepare yourself and center the community. And then we had examples of the organization going through the inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower framework. Now, down at the bottom, we go back to the first presentation, which felt like it really grounded and grounds the whole conversation around power and building power, which is that the table, this question of who's at the table is inherently problematic. And we can ask who's at it, how was it made? It's not accessible, it's not long enough or wide enough. Who does it ultimately serve? And it's not just the table, it's the chairs that are broken too. And so we need to bring our own and equip young people to build their own. And then finally, on the very right-hand side, this is just a snippet of what I heard both in the breakout rooms as well as in the video about what power means. And some of the big themes were, first, this quote that fresh food is a right, not a privilege. And I saw that there was amplification of that in the chat, that power means control, and specifically having historically marginalized communities making decisions and having resources. It means sharing and collaboration. There is a lot around connecting and partnerships. It means people being curious and also knowing where their food comes from, education and affordability. And there are a few more things that I have in my notes to add on here that I heard in the chat room. But that's the big picture of what's coming up for me. And with that, I will hand it back to Sunny.
And I'm going to hand it right over to Miguel. So thanks, y'all. And Rio, this is so cool. And yes, for those asking, if we're going to share this out. 100%, we will be sharing this out at the end.
Rio, thank you for that beautiful illustration. Oh my gosh, you captured everything that was talked about today. And in fact, when I think back about some of the work that we were doing, we always, when I was speaking to our communities, when I was a school food service director, I always used a tree and I always used the table. What I learned today was that the table for me was just a table of representation. I didn't realize that that table too could have been broken, needed to be built. So anyway, I've learned quite a bit and I love these sessions because for that reason, just from learning from everybody. But I want to thank all of you, those of you that stuck here to the very end for the 2 hours, you passionate, loyal food advocates who made time to join us today at our movement meeting. We learned how we can build a stronger community, with a racially just food system. So thank you again. I look forward to the day that we could spend some time together, because I know that energy in the room, even though it's here, there's nothing that can replicate that energy that we get from each other when we're together in close proximities, talking to each other. I also want to thank our National Farm to School Network team for coordinating this movement meeting. They've done an incredible job putting it all together for us and having us an opportunity to learn from each other and share and speak on the things that are most important to us. I also want to thank the wonderful, inspiring speakers. Great work on everybody's part. Thank you for what you do and inspiring all of us. I mean, this is what kept me going all these years, is listening to people like yourselves doing this incredible work and learning from you. Thank you to Red Square Media for the video production. That was beautifully done as well. We all enjoyed that. I heard lots of great comments about that. And last but not least, I want to thank our sponsors. And you see our slide of without our sponsors, honestly, this would have been a difficult process to move forward. So thank you to CoBank, Farm Credit, National Co-op, Grocers, Vitamix, and of course, WK Kellogg Foundation. We thank them all for continuing to support our programs. We know that we need to do this work together. We've talked about that, how important it is for all of us working together and getting the word out to our communities so we can build a much stronger racially just food system together. Hundreds of thousands of voices across the nation, we can acknowledge a cohesive message across the nation in terms of the work that we're trying to do. So I ask all of you to look at your networks and your communities and find out who's a member or who, I still talk to people today that they have no idea who the National Farm to School Network is. We're speaking to the choir today. You know who we are, but we need to get more people engaged to do this work so we can continue to improve our communities. I'm going to leave you with 3 last things here. That one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou. Over the years, I've heard people say to me, "Well, Miguel, I didn't know. I was doing. This is what I knew." And I simply would say to them, I would quote Maya Angelou. I said, "Listen, I'm going to tell you how Maya Angelou says. She says, do your best until you know better, and then when you know better, do better." So that's all we can ask of anyone. We all have one thing in common. I heard it in our breakout session, and that is hope. We hope for a better world. We hope to make this a better community for our children, for the people that live and breathe and partake in our communities. And so with hope, for me, means light. And when I think of light, I think of an opportunity to have the best reflections on the work that we do. And we know, and we've heard many times, when there's light, there's no darkness. So continue to be the light out in your communities for the work that you're doing. We truly appreciate everything that you do. We, again, thank you for your dedication, your commitment, and support of the National Farm to School Network. We have an evaluation that should be in the chat for you to fill out. So we also are going to be sending that out to everyone else that wasn't able to stay for the full 2 hours. But again, thank you so much on behalf of the National Farm to School Network. And I hope, again, that someday we can be together and share in our experiences. Thank you.